Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner, episode 4, brought to you by the Sofa Sports podcast. I'm your host, Harry Simiu, and this evening I'm joined by two fantastic guests. Firstly, freelance sports informative Chris Davison joins me. Chris, welcome to the show, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Yourself, mate?
I'm all good, man. I'm all good. Pleasure to have you on.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. And we are joined by Sofa Sports panelist Dan DeLuca. Dan, how's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. Glad to have you both on, of course. The transfer window is almost shut at the time of recording. There's around about 45 minutes remaining, and it's been a big day for the Gunners. Let's start with the signing of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. That was confirmed firstly by Borussia Dortmund and then by Arsenal shortly afterwards. Chris, what are your thoughts on his arrival?
Oh, well, I don't think I need to say too much on that front. I think all Arsenal fans are very happy with it. A fantastic signing. Obviously, we saw earlier on in the month when Wenger said that if Alexis was going to go, he said that we'd only replace him with, world-class players. And I'm very happy that we've got Aubameyang in, as well as Mkhitaryan. You look back before this transfer window, if you would have asked me if we'd end up with anyone like Aubameyang, I would have said, no chance, maybe in the summer with that sort of quality. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. I think he'll be absolutely fantastic in the Premier League.
Excellent. Chris, as someone who's sort of in the know, how long has this deal been on the cards for? Is this something that's been in the pipeline for quite some time, or was you surprised when the initial
when Sven Mislintat obviously came in from Dortmund, he passed on quite a few names to the board, to Wenger himself, and Aubameyang was one of the standout names, if you like. And it all started a couple of months ago. Like I said, Mislintat put Aubameyang's name in there, and the club said, look, if a deal can happen, then it would be absolutely brilliant. Obviously recently we've all seen Aubameyang hasn't had the best of times at Dortmund. That was clear to see. The fans were turning on him. Obviously senior people at Dortmund as well weren't happy to sort of have him there any longer. So obviously the club over time became increasingly confident that they could get Aubameyang. Like Wenger said before, if a top player becomes available, then they'll do their very best to get them, and I think that's exactly what's done with Aubameyang.
Yeah, I mean, Aubameyang's defended himself a little bit, hasn't he? His statement sort of on social media, I believe, this afternoon was something along the lines of, I wanted to leave Dortmund in the summer, didn't quite happen, and I regret sort of the way things ended. Dan, what are your thoughts on the signing of Dan DeLuca from a sort of more... signing of Dan DeLuca, the signing of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang from a more sort of neutral perspective?
Yeah, I think if they signed Dan DeLuca, it'd be a top signing, and I'd have a lot to offer the forward line, or possibly even a little job at centre half. But Aubameyang, yeah, look, it's an exciting signing, isn't it? It's a big name coming to the football club, and he's a really good, useful player, and he scores goals in an exciting side. The German league, it's not in the worst place in the world. It's quite competitive up there in the top 6 places outside of Bayern Munich. And he's got a good goals record over 3 years. I think Arsenal have done well to bring him in. They've stolen the march on, you heard the sort of clubs he was linked with in the summer, where we're just saying he wanted out in the summer. The clubs who rimmed from then linked with him. We're talking about Real Madrid, clubs of that nature. So to steal a march when he comes available is a great bit of business. And I think Arsenal fans are right to be excited about him coming into the club for sure. As an isolated signing, I don't think anyone can have any complaints.
Yeah, okay, fair play. As part of the triangle of transfers that paved the way for this deal to happen, Olivier Giroud joined London rivals Chelsea. Chris, were you sad to see him go?
Yeah, I must admit, I was very disappointed to see Olivier leave. He's been a great servant to us since he arrived, and he scored some very important goals. Very passionate player. Like I said, he's been loyal before. Obviously he could have left in the summer, but he said no. I'll fight for my place in the team. And he did do that for us. Obviously, he found it difficult with Lacazette arriving. And at the end of the day, he's had to make a tough decision. I think he's thinking about his World Cup involvement as well. Because obviously, that's coming up. So he'll want to be playing as much as he can. What a signing for Chelsea. I mean, with the fee we're being talked about around 20 million, that's an absolute bargain. I mean, people can say, he's 31, nearly 32. But he scores important goals. He's got big presence in the opponent's box. He's a real danger man. But yeah, disappointed to see him go. I mean, I guess the arrival of Aubameyang today softened the blow a little bit. But I think most Arsenal fans are a little bit disappointed to see him go to a big London rival, Chelsea. Yeah.
Dan, what will Olivier Giroud offer to Chelsea? Is it a bad miss for Arsenal? Will we be kicking ourselves?
Yeah, it is. It's a really bad miss for Arsenal. And it's a shame that it's almost a triangle that's forced this situation. And you have to wonder if the business had started earlier, there might have been another solution that didn't involve Arsenal losing Olivier Giroud. I'm sure you're going to ask us later on about the transfer window as a whole, so I'll hold off on my opinions on that. But I think you find we're talking about a player who's leaving to get first team minutes and to try and force his way into the French World Cup squad. And when you talk about that, you're kind of thinking of a player who's gone down the league or gone to a slightly smaller club. I don't know, he's not going to get picked for England probably, but Walcott going to Everton, that's the sort of move that I associate with a player needing minutes to try and force his way onto a World Cup aeroplane. And obviously he scored a couple of goals tonight, hasn't he? So, 6 months worth of form, suddenly he forces his way in. You associate with a step down. Giroud, it's the weirdest transfer ever because he's almost gone from last season, arguably, was his best season in an Arsenal shirt, even though he didn't play minutes. The impact he had for the club was brilliant. Then he struggled to get game time even from the bench of any note. And then suddenly he's almost forced out of the club as a make-weight. And then he's joined a Champions League club in Chelsea, still the champions of England currently, for a little bit longer. And the team who will reinvest in the summer and challenge for titles again. So it's almost, in a way, it's a step up for him. It's a really weird transfer triangle. But I think Arsenal have made a mistake, a big mistake, and I'm sure we'll come on to that in a minute.
In allowing him to leave. Just before we move on, guys, Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on Alex Lacazette. He's come under quite a bit of criticism of late. Maybe it's not been fair. But in your opinion, has Aubameyang come into play ahead of Lacazette or with him?
That's a tough one, I mean, we before Lacazette arrived, I think most Arsenal fans were really excited about him potentially coming, and obviously eventually he did. We know he's a clinical finisher. We showed that at Lyon. A number of clubs were after him, and I think we done quite well to sign him in the end. Aubameyang's a player, it's a tough one to say. I mean, I would personally love to see them play together. I think it would be absolutely lethal with them two up front, Ozil, Mkhitaryan behind. It's a tough one to call, really. I mean, hopefully that might maybe boost Lacazette in a positive way. Maybe they'll see Aubameyang come in and say, look, I need to get my game together. I need to start scoring more goals and show Wenger that I am really capable of it. But I wouldn't say Lacazette's got too much to prove. We know he's a clinical finisher. Hopefully, the arrival of Aubameyang will sort of boost Lacazette in a positive way and get him back on form.
Yeah. Dan, a player staying put is Mesut Ozil. It looks as though he's agreed to sign a contract extension at the club and will be earning a reported 350 grand a week. In your view, is he worth it?
No, he's not worth it. However, you've got to look. So I don't support Arsenal, all right? So it's easy for me to say he's not worth it sitting here. I'm judging a player over 4 years. Yeah, he's got lots of ability. Yeah, now Sanchez has gone. He's the best player at the football club, so he needs to become the highest earner. You talk about the money involved. It seems an extortionate amount. It's one of those things with Ozil I'll be looking out for. his first 3 seasons, some isolated good performances in there. The FA Cup final against Aston Villa springs to mind, where he ran the show, flashes of ability and long periods of frustration. And he seems to have been playing well for the last 4 months, almost at the point the contract negotiations were going stale, where Arsenal were saying to him, do you know what, we're not paying what you want. The performances haven't warranted that. And it's almost spurred him on. So what I want to see from Ozil now, as a footballer, once he signed this deal, is to carry those level of performances through. That's what Arsenal fans are going to want to see. And he needs to repay the faith in the football club. Another way of looking at it as a positive, I guess, is the money pays for itself, in the sense that one of the benefits of the transfer window for Arsenal is they've got rid of quite a bit of dead wood, if you like. Or this season, I know it was the last transfer window, but Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain went, some money came in for him. That's 2 years worth of wages there. Coquelin's gone. He was on the peripheries. That's a couple of years worth of wages there. So that money's not necessarily being reinvested. We believe there's money in the kitty anyway. So I think if you look at it as if you're buying Ozil for another 4 seasons, if that's what it is, 3 seasons.
I think so.
Yes, you're buying him for another 3 seasons, and the money's been generated through player sales. So in that respect, does it really matter what he's getting? Probably not, I suppose. As a statement, Arsenal, with Sanchez going now, they had to keep him at the football club, and that was the price he demanded.
Yeah, I mean, it's true what you said, though. When you look at the money they've recuperated, if you think about the sale of Theo Walcott, the sale of Francis Coquelin, and that of Olivier Giroud, we've almost sort of got Aubameyang for free, if you think about it. There's not really been that much investment from sort of the club's cash reserves again, has there? Chris, what are your thoughts on Mesut Ozil? I know most Arsenal fans are over the moon that we've kept him. Do you think he was worth it? Do you think it was worth committing ourselves to such a big contract to keep him at the club?
Yes, I believe it was worth it. I mean, you look over the years and you look at some of the big players that were sold to rivals or to other teams. Fans have been getting increasingly unhappy with that. Van Persie to Man United, Fabregas to Barcelona, same with Henry as well. We've always sort of, as soon as a good player comes to us, has a really good few seasons and stuff. And, we were a bit of a selling club. And I think, we obviously lost Sanchez earlier on in the window. I think it was massively important for the club to keep Ozil. I think it would have caused a lot of frustration, a bit of an uproar amongst the fans if Ozil was to go. Obviously, since arriving from Real Madrid, he's been up and down in form and stuff. He's come under quite a bit of criticism. But as of late, I think he's been absolutely fantastic. Easily been our best player on the pitch. I've seen quite a bit of an increase of work rate on the pitch as well. He seems to be working a lot more and a lot more determined, a lot more focused. And you can see he's happy in London. You can see he's proud to play for the badge. And that's the sort of players I want at the club. So I'm personally, I think it was really worth getting him tied down on the new contract, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I share the same thoughts. I'm really pleased that he signed. I think more so because of the statement it sends out, as rather than just being based on his ability. I think, that was what the club needed to do. They needed to send out that statement to say that, what, we do want to compete. We do want to keep our top players. And I agree with what Dan said to an extent as well, because he has had some poor performances over the years, and he's been singled out for a lot of criticism, in particular in some of the bigger games. But he has really bucked up his ideas, and perhaps, like Dan said, it was to do with the contract thing. Let's hope it doesn't drop off now. But, Mesut Ozil is the main man at Arsenal now. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a bit. He's been the main man at Arsenal for the last 2 or 3 months, I think, while the Sanchez saga has been going on. And he seems to have revelled in it. And I think that ties into the work rate that Chris is alluding to. And with work rate comes better performances. That's a fact in the Premier League. Long gone are the days where you can have luxury players in the middle of the park. That doesn't happen in this country anymore. He does seem to have revelled in it. So, but the bit about the criticism that he gets, that's not going to go away now. That if anything, that's going to intensify, because now you're going to get, you get the people like me, and I'm very critical of him as a player because I expected more when he arrived. based on his ability and what he's done in his career to date. But now you're going to get the type of people who say, he's on 350 grand a week, he should be doing this, he should be doing that. So now the 40 million price tag's gone away, that's irrelevant. You know, he's paid his dues, he's served his time for that, he spent the time at the club. Now it's about how much his contract is worth. So, you know, to pick him out if he has one bad game every 10, that's going to be harsh. You know, you shouldn't be doing stuff like that unless it's a particularly big game and, you know, he's not contributed. But, you know, previously it was 1 in 2, 1 in 3. So 1 in 10 he'll get away with it. It happens. But if there's a lot of bad performances or a bad spell of form, he's going to get that criticism again, and he knows that, and he's going to have to find a way of playing through it.
Yeah, totally agree. Guys, I don't want to be negative because I feel like too many Arsenal fans are these days. Because when you look at it, it has been a positive deadline day overall. You know, we've signed Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Mesut Ozil's committed to the club. But have we missed a trick by failing to strengthen defensively? Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I think we have. I think it was very important that we got another defensive player in before the window shut at 11. You know, all the fans have been screaming out for that. Apart from obviously the Aubameyang sign, I think we've struggled defensively. It's since people obviously said since Vieira left, we've never really got in a similar player in that sort of defensive midfield role. Player that, you know, breaks up play and strong, tough tackler, great energy rate in that midfield. You know, I think when you look at the recent performances of Xhaka, and I don't like picking out individual players, but, you know, I haven't been overly impressed by Xhaka, if I'm honest with you. And I think, you know, you look at a player like Jack Wilshere, great defense, great energy rate, and you know, works very hard every game. I think we need another player like that, but in a more defensive role in the field. And you know, obviously, you can talk about centre back as well. Obviously, Koscielny, he's getting on a little bit. You know, he's obviously had a few injury struggles as well. I think we definitely need to address that in the summer. Obviously, there's been talks about Kostas Manolas coming in. We even tried to sign Johnny Evans today, but failed. So I think, you know, it's very clear to see Arsenal do want to strengthen in those areas. I think maybe it was just maybe leaving it a little bit too late in this window. We've obviously been monitoring quite a few players, Diallo and the Bundesliga as well. So I think maybe 1 or 2 big names defensively will come in the summer. I think we could have done maybe with 1 more addition in this window just to help us get through the remainder of the season. But maybe in the summer, hopefully, there'll be a bit of movement on that front. Yeah.
No, the only thing for me, Chris, is when you look at that sort of that comparison between Patrick Vieira and some of our modern day players, I think it's a bit of a difficult comparison to make. And I'll explain why. Because I feel as though people say, you know, we're missing a Patrick Vieira, but since Patrick Vieira was in that Arsenal team, I feel like the game's changed an awful lot. You know, in those days, it was common to see a 4-4-2, and you had 2 central midfielders. You know, they weren't defensive midfielders, they weren't attacking midfielders, they were just central midfielders. And these labels we now put on midfield players, you know, we call Mesut Ozil a number 10. We call, you know, someone like Kante a defensive midfielder. We seem to label central midfielders a lot more specifically now, and I think it's very difficult to find a player of sort of Patrick Vieira's profile, because I'm not sure there's that many of them around anymore.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, obviously the game has changed a lot in regards to positions, etc. I think when Kante was at Leicester when they won the league, you know, he was a standout player for them. And one of the reasons he stood out is because of not only his energy rate, but he done really well to get the ball back. You know, he's sort of box to box. You know, he's a good tackler of the ball. Good leadership as well. You know, he was very good tactically. You know, he knew what he was doing. And you know, I look at Xhaka last night, and you know, his defensive awareness, especially for, I think it was Swansea's equaliser. He was really poor. He didn't track his man at all. And I think, I think we expect a bit more from Xhaka defensively, but I don't think he's the right type of player for that. And he's good at his passing. Obviously, he's a good leader as well. Creates opportunities, but I think with Wilshere in there, who I would love to obviously see start near enough every game for Arsenal now, because I think ever since he's come in, he's been absolutely magnificent. I just think we need a player in there that can just add a bit more defensive quality in there. I mean, obviously you can question centre backs as well, but I mean, for me, Xhaka has been poor in that aspect. I think we just need to concentrate. Maybe you say you don't get the defensive midfielders or even central midfielders like Vieira now, but there is a lot of players out there that can do a job just like he did, and I think that's what we should be looking at, in my opinion.
Okay, Dan, what are your thoughts? Have Arsenal missed the trick by failing to strengthen either at the back or in the centre of midfield?
Yeah, they have. And the thing with the January transfer window, there's a lot of Arsenal fans who have been talking about what a great window it's been. I don't share that view personally, but the thing is, the January window, it's almost like it's a top-up. You're topping up what you've done in the summer. Something's missed, a player gets injured, and then Man City aren't happy with being 45 points clear, so they spend another £200 million. That's the January transfer window. Like the last few years have been nothing's happened in the January transfer window. So you look from a defensive point of view. There's Laporta's move to Manchester City for stupid money. You're not going to get him. You're not going to compete with that. And Van Dijk is the only other high-profile defender who's moved, and he was done. He was a done deal in the summer for Liverpool, and I think it was just some haggling and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So he was only ever going to go there. So if you look at what's available in January, it's difficult for Arsenal and Arsene Wenger to find the players we need. I'm going to shelve the Vieira thing for a minute, because in Vieira we're talking about one of the greatest midfielders to play in English football in the history of the Premier League era, and probably decades before as well. So we're talking about replacing him. Well, forget it. Yeah, like you said, the positions don't exist anymore. And we're talking about an absolutely brilliant footballer who could do absolutely everything. I don't think players like that exist anymore. And if they do, Arsenal are going to struggle to come out on top in the market for that sort of player anyway. So what Arsenal need to be doing is looking for a hybrid of the two defensive centre midfielders they've got. Wilshere's playing a lot deeper than he used to at the beginning of his career. And there needs to be someone in there who's just a pure tackler. He doesn't even have to be the best player in the world, because you've got enough ability in the attacking positions to make up for that. You just need someone to get the ball, hassle it, win it back, and then just give it to someone who can play football. Yeah. A player like when you sign him and everyone cries their eyes out because they think he's terrible, but after 2 months you think actually he's quite useful. Because the problem with Arsenal defensively, Monreal's all right, to be fair, but none of the defenders can defend anymore properly. Koscielny was a very good defender in his day. He's not anymore. The centre half next to him, whichever one plays, it doesn't work. I don't think Bellerin can defend either, and his pace gets him out of a lot of trouble defensively, and most of his best work's coming forward. So when you've got that situation, you need to have defensive midfielders who can defend and contribute to the defensive setup, and then you'll get away with it. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So in this window, to fix that is very, very, very difficult for Arsenal. So yeah, a trick has been missed, but to blame it on this window, I think it's tough. So if I had 60 million to spend, if I was Arsenal, I wouldn't be spending it on Aubameyang if I could pick anyone. If that was all the money I had, I would find a defensive player to tidy it up.
Okay.
But what do? The players aren't available. Aubameyang is available. You can't leave him there. So I'm not criticising in that respect. But if you had a choice, you had that much money and all the players to choose from, attacking midfielders / forwards isn't what Arsenal need.
Okay. As well as Aubameyang, we've seen Henrik Mkhitaryan and Konstantinos Mavropanos come in, but Alexis, Walcott, Giroud, and now Debuchy have all left the club this month. Chris, in your opinion, if you was to look at it from an outside point of view, as sort of fair as you can be, are Arsenal in a better position than we were when the window opened?
Another tough one to answer, really. I mean, when you look at Debuchy, I mean, obviously, he was a very funny player when we had him here. It didn't really work out for him. Obviously, a few injury problems again, and I don't think he sort of lived up to his full potential. In all honesty, I'm not overly disappointed to see him go. He was taking up quite a bit of the wage as well. So obviously we've got a bit more money on that front now. It does. I mean, a little bit concerned of obviously Bellerin's the only sort of proper right back now, or right wing back, if you like. Obviously, people have been saying Maitland-Niles could play there as well, which is obviously possible. But I would have liked to have seen that maybe again, like we've been talking about. I know it is difficult to bring these sort of players in January, but maybe in the summer we could look at bringing another right back, full back in, if you like, just to give Bellerin a bit more competition. But obviously, I already said, very disappointed to see Giroud go. I think he would have still been a very important player to us, whether it be in the Europa League and in the cup games. Also to come off the bench in maybe Premier League games as well and rotate with possibly Aubameyang. Like I said, I think he will miss his presence. In regards to Theo, again, as much as I respect him, again, fantastic servant to the football club. Had a lot of time for Arsenal, had a lot of time for the manager and the fans. He's a lovely guy. He just wasn't getting the playing time again, and when he did play, I think most fans were getting a little bit frustrated with him again because he wasn't overly performing very well. So I mean, obviously Coquelin's gone as well. Again, another player. The names we're mentioning weren't overly getting a lot of game time. And Wenger's true to his words, especially all four of those players Wenger got on well with. Walcott, Coquelin, Giroud, Debuchy, all got on well with them. And he did want what was best for them, and that was to be playing. And they just wasn't getting enough playing time at Arsenal. So, I mean, maybe there's one or two we could hopefully replace in the summer now, just to add a bit more depth to the squad. But I think with a big question mark over Giroud, maybe. I think with the others, I think we've done the right thing. Okay.
So, Dan, do you think that we're seeing the start of some sort of revolution at Arsenal? Is this the preparations for life after Wenger? Is it finally starting to happen? What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that. I think it's the start of the rebuild of Arsenal's next team. Now, how good that team will be compared to past Arsenal sides. In fact, that's not fair. Recent Arsenal sides rather than past Arsenal sides. How good it will be compared to them, I'm not too sure. How good it will be compared to the competition in the Premier League. The challenge, the bar has been raised, and obviously it's going to be a tough rebuild. My personal view from an outsider looking in, look, it's going to happen sooner or later. Wenger's going to step down. But this window, to me, seems to be the first signs, actually, that's happening. And I'll explain what I mean. So, Wenger, you'll know better than me, but he's got his favourites. He's always had his favourites that, for whatever happens, they always seem to be there. And this window, we've started to see them disappear. Like Theo Walcott, you wonder whether Wenger's fully been involved in that decision. You wonder whether he's clearly reluctant to let go of Giroud. He said as much in the press conference. I just wonder if slowly the power is being shifted around. There's been a lot of new people that come in at the club in the back room, haven't they, in the last couple of months?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So are they starting to impose their views on the manager? It certainly feels that way. Although by the same token, it's a lazy guess by me because we know he's only got 1 year left or two. So I'm not going to win any champion tipster awards by saying I think this might be his last season. But my point is, Oxlade-Chamberlain is a player he's been pretty loyal to. And this year he's been shipped out as well. So definitely, if you look at the forward line now, there's a 60 million attacker there in Aubameyang. There's a 50 million attacker there in Lacazette. These are new players to the club. They're not going anywhere anytime soon unless they flop disastrously. You've got Ozil who signed a new contract. You've got Iwobi who's playing more games and he's improving. So from an attacking point of view, that's set. So in terms of the rebuild, that's that done. When Wenger came in, he inherited a back four that was fixed, and he had to build an attack, and then he built a defence again. And it's like when you change your golf clubs. You buy your driver and your woods one year, and next year you buy your irons, and then you go round again. So I think the rebuild for Arsenal has begun. How successful it's going to be is difficult, and it will depend on the circumstances. But there's certainly changes in terms of the staff, and a lot of Wenger's favourites are who I would have expected to stay at the club forever and just flit away, just disappear. A bit like the injured players who sat there for years, like Arteta and Rosicky, players like that. These don't feel like Wenger South to me. I don't know how you feel about that, Harry.
To an extent, I agree. I feel like, from what I've heard, it was pretty evident that Ivan Gazidis wanted Wenger out in the summer, and you have to assume that he agreed to him staying on the condition that he was allowed to begin building, and that means, that meant the recruitment of Sven Mislintat and Sanlehi, who's going to come over from Barcelona as well. Arsenal's always been against the director of football, and he's always been pretty loyal to Steve Rowley, who was his chief scout right from when he first arrived at the club, who has supposedly resigned, stepped down, whatever you want to call it. I think he was pushed. But obviously, if someone's worked for the club for so many years, the respectful thing to do is to say he's resigned. I think that's what's happened there. I think they are preparing for life after Wenger. I don't think we're quite in a place yet where Wenger has zero say in any transfer activity, but I think his stronghold is weakening slowly. And I share the same opinion. I think this could be Arsenal's last season. Chris, I don't know what you think about that.
I sort of agree with you guys. I mean, obviously, a lot of changes in the background. Obviously, sort of big name players coming into the club as well. I think, ideally, I think maybe, I don't know if you guys agree, I would have ideally liked to see Wenger leave after we last won the FA Cup. I think that would have been the most ideal situation. So he could leave on a high. And I think you guys, you were talking about, obviously, Gazidis wanting ideally Wenger to leave before this season. I think what it was down to in the end is that, obviously, there was a bit of conflict there, and Arsene Wenger pretty much said to the board, look, give me this one last chance. I want to do everything I can to get this team back at the top. I've done it before. Let me try and do it again and leave on a high. Unfortunately, so far this season, not a lot has changed on that front, and obviously disappointing results and etc. I mean, like you guys were saying, it is looking like it could be Wenger's last season. Here, obviously, there's been a few whispers about talking to potential candidates to replace him, the likes of Ancelotti. There's certainly a name the club are considering. There's been I don't know if you guys remember, there was reports earlier on in the season that there had already been an agreement between Ancelotti and Arsenal for him to take over in the summer.
Yep.
There isn't actually an agreement yet, but there's a few names that Arsenal are considering. So it's no secret that they're planning with for life without Wenger. But like you guys said, I think it could be an interesting summer in regards to Wenger's future, and I think obviously the outcome of the season could obviously have an impact in that.
Of course, only time will tell, guys. That brings us to the end of episode 4. I want to say a huge thank you to my guests this week. First of all, Chris, thank you for joining us. And do you want to tell us how people can follow you and keep in touch, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, well, just obviously I'm on Twitter at C11Davison, Chris Davison. Just give me a follow on there if you're not already. I'm always active on Twitter, just obviously keeping all the Arsenal fans up to date on everything. Do sort of daily live broadcasts as well. Obviously the transfer window, what is the time now, is going to end in about 8 minutes time. So obviously we tried to get Evans today, but we failed in that, unfortunately. There is a few whispers that we could actually offer Alex Song a contract. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Wow. There is obviously there's talk, obviously he's back training at London Colney to keep up his fitness. Obviously he's been released by Ruben Kazan. But there is a few whispers that we could offer him a contract. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, if he's fit and able, then I don't see why not. I actually think he turned into quite a decent player before he left. And, you know, I was very critical of him in the beginning, but I thought by the time he left, he had improved a great deal. And he is the type of player that we're missing. Whether I think he's a long-term answer or whether I think he's good enough to play at the top level week in, week out is a completely different thing. But I think he can offer something that we don't have and we perhaps lost when Francis Coquelin left. DeLuca?
I wouldn't advise it. It contradict what I just said about Wenger's favourites as well. But, you know, I'd liken it to Flamini going back to the club. It didn't really work out, to be honest. If you get released from Ruben Kazan, you're not fit for you're not fit for the Premier League. And it's as simple as that for me. I think it'd be a bad move. If he played one good game on his second debut, and then, you know, he'd disappear into the peripheries again, and I think it's a backward step that Arsenal should avoid.
Hey,
you may as well sign up a Bowie as well while you're at it. He's looking for a home as well.
Like I said, it's just a few whispers at the rumours. I wouldn't read too much into it. Obviously, it's just what's coming out of the club today. I'm not even sure if that's just because obviously this picture of Alex Song and an Arsenal training top at Colney came about. We'll have to see. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned about Flamini a minute ago, I mean, I wouldn't put it past Wenger actually offering Song a contract. We know what Wenger's like on ex-players. You know, if they're fit and training back with the team, and he thinks they could add a little bit more depth in the squad, who knows? We'll have to see on that one.
Yeah, interesting. Dan, do you want to give us your Twitter handle and how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so it's DDL_SSN. I'm regular panelist on the Sofa Sports News podcast. I've lost a few followers as well, so I must have put in some bad performances on the pod. But if you want to make my numbers back up to a respectable level, then you can find me there.
I don't think it's that, Dan. I just don't think you're very likable on Twitter, to be honest.
I think everyone's blocked me. That's what it is.
Guys, if you're listening via iTunes or YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're listening via SoundCloud, give us a like. Follow us on Twitter at Chronicles_AFC. And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.